Welcome back into the All Things Mizzou podcast presented by Missouri Tigers on SI. Missouri heading to Auburn this week, and we'll be down there with them in Alabama, traveling there for their first road game of the season. A lot of storylines in this one, especially coming after the close loss to Alabama. Eli Drinkwitz in his Tuesday press conference was clearly ready to move on after about the fifth or sixth question, reflecting on that Alabama game. He was done answering questions about us, told us to ask him about Auburn. So I had to kind of reshape my question to be about future looking for sure. But excited to talk about this Auburn game today and maybe to Eli Drinkwitz's, displeasure. Take one last look at Alabama and again, forward-looking way for things that apply to this team moving forward. So Joey Van Summeren, joined by Michael Sampson, always take a look at this Mizzou football team. Michael, just what are your feelings that we're number 16 now? Mizzou is at.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to get in trouble for talking about Alabama, like walking on eggshells a little bit. I think kind of, what I took away from the most after Alabama, and it's what I said in our post-game reaction, is that the sky's not falling. This is still a really good football team, but I think we probably know what this team is now. So that was kind of my takeaway, that we know the flaws, we know their strengths, and those are things that those aren't changing, you're not going to snap your fingers and the secondary is going to improve. I guess Bo Prabula could improve his decision-making. That's, something that is fixable, but there are things on this team that aren't just going to change overnight. And they're going to have to be things that they adapt to. So I think that was kind of my big takeaway from this game. But again, all things considered, they didn't play their best football game by any means. I think Eli Drinkwitz acknowledged that. I think Kalen DeBoer and the Alabama coaching staff also acknowledged that they didn't play their best football game. Actually, I don't have it pulled up, but I know for a fact that Kane Womack was not thrilled and that Ryan Grubbs was not thrilled with how they played. So neither team played particularly amazing, but all things considered, Missouri did not play well. And they had the ball with a chance to win the game. They didn't, obviously, kind of just, won a couple big plays away. And you could probably look back at multiple moments of that game and say, well, if they did this instead of this, then, looking at a potential different result. But football is not really a game of what ifs. So not realistic there. But, I mean, they're definitely a few plays away. It kind of seems like that's what we've been saying about some of these losses over the last couple of years, that they're just a big play or two away from beating some of these big teams. Like I feel like I don't remember Missouri's loss on the road to Georgia all that well a couple years ago, 2 years ago. But that's one that kind of comes to my mind, where they had a chance to win, but they just didn't make enough plays, right? LSU maybe that season is a good example at home as well. So just kind of that same theme where they're like almost there, really, really close, but they just don't have enough big plays, primarily on offense, I'd like to think, but in general, to push them over the finish line. So it's, something to examine for sure. But again, sky's not falling. Really good opportunity to kind of prove some of those Missouri can't win on the road doubters wrong this week, because Auburn, is a really good football team, and they have plenty of talent. They shouldn't be 3-3. No, I know their schedule's been brutal, and we'll talk about that here in a second, but they have the talent of not a 3-3 football team. Now someone has to lose, but they're very good, but they're not playing well, and things are kind of messy there. So this is a good opportunity for Missouri to get a road win that, might not be a resume booster, but definitely could be a confidence booster. So should be a interesting game. It's not going to be an easy one. I don't know about you, Joey. I'm excited to get down to Auburn. Not an area I'm particularly familiar with at all. So that should be fun as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm excited to talk about this Auburn team because it is a interesting study. And a few things what you said there about Missouri, because I'm conflicted as far as what you said about we know what this team is, because I do generally agree with you in that we know the issues, we know the strengths, but also, as you hit on too, I don't think we've seen the best football game from this team. And it's hard to say in a game where Ahmad Hardy only has a little over 50 yards on 12 carries it was. Like, I think what we saw last Saturday is far from their peak, and I think they're capable of much more. And Bo Prabula is another area where I think if that I think has the potential to be perform much better in big games like this. But also, like you said, and Drinkwood's highlighted saying we didn't have the winning play is absolutely true, because you look at, again, those two losses that you mentioned are the top two that come to my mind, where the stakes and the setup for the game were pretty similar for 2023 against LSU and 2023 against Georgia. Not as much, at least going into it, for either the Texas A&M or Alabama games last year, because with Texas A&M, people didn't realize they were that great at the time. Missouri getting that win over Missouri, that blowout win, was really the way that the Aggies announced their presence. And then obviously when you're down your starting quarterback against Alabama, the perception of that is going to change. So I think, again, the closest comparisons we have as far as the stakes, the buildup to a game, is LSU and then Georgia in 23. What did you have to add there, Michael?
I was just gonna say I agree with what you said as kind of a counterpoint, and at the same time, for not knowing or to have not having seen the best football game from this team, I also think there's some untapped potential with certain positions and players on the roster, not the ones we've been talking about. Like I said, like I think the secondary is what it is. That's just gonna be what it is. You know, the offensive line, I feel like they've improved. You know, that just is what it is. But there definitely are certain players, like we're going to talk about Donovan Olubade here in a second. I think Eli Drinkwitz is now fully aware that that's a guy they have to get more involved. Again, like, you're absolutely right. What happens if Ahmad Hardy gets 20 carries instead of 12? I mean, that's, again, you know, we can play the what if game, and it's too late for that. Obviously, I'm sure the coaching staff has done that themselves. But you know, I do agree with what you said. I think there's some untapped potential in a few position groups where we haven't seen the best, and Bo Prabula as well. I mean, it's clear that the talent is there. Just decision making and pocket presence are still a little shaky. So I agree with what you said. But yeah, I'll stand by my opinion though.
Oh, right. Absolutely. I think, yes, for what you're saying there about, I think most of the defense is absolutely true, and special teams as well. As far as the secondary, those guys are all in at least their second year starting. And so that's definitely a concern. I don't know at this point. They've spent a lot of time, they've clearly diagnosed issues, it seems, at least from their words, a little less hopeful about that developing or somebody coming to save them there, as compared to a few other positions on the offense. We know the secondary, again, is what it is, and the pass rush on the better end of it is what it is. That was a really good showing by Damon Wilson, specifically. Zion Young, that penalty on the first defensive drive is just absolutely killer, as a lot of people have highlighted. Yeah, it's only the first drive, but it just felt like if Missouri gets that up, if they could hold Alabama to a 3-and-out after a really good opening drive on offense, Missouri is able to take a 14, like, that's great field position. It's definitely tough to look back on that senseless, unnecessary penalty from Zion Young, easily avoidable. But overall, thought the pass rush had a good day there. But again, Eli Drinkwood said they couldn't find the winning play. I think that's true. I think that was true, like you mentioned, against LSU and Georgia. I also think, though, it's easy to say that in hindsight, but also with Missouri, like, they had a lot of things that could have been the winning play, in my opinion. Like, they have those plays that, just because of the circumstance of the scoreboard, like, just wasn't, I mean, it was at the right time. They needed those big plays as well, but just didn't have the last word of it, basically. And I think part of that, too, it comes down to Bo Prabula's execution in late moments that he has to improve on. And I also think Alabama, in the same way that Missouri is kicking themselves of, oh, if we only did this, if we only avoided that play, if Alabama loses this game, which they were very close to, Alabama could have had plenty of examples to look back on for themselves as well. It wouldn't have been just a case of, like, I mean, part of those were Missouri's doing, but also part of it was Alabama keeping this Missouri in this game for little bit longer than they probably should have. However, on that same coin, like Missouri was able to do enough to keep themselves in this game late. So let's talk about a few things in this game in particular. So first off, Ahmad Hardy and Jamal Roberts. In the last 14 minutes of the game, the only rushing attempt that Missouri had was on Jamal Roberts' fake punt. Ahmad Hardy definitely seemed like he got phased out after he fumbled on that drive where Missouri was driving down the field. Obviously, they end up scoring on that drive, but also too, as Rinkwitz mentioned, the game main thing with it was the fact that Missouri was not staying on the field very long. They had, I believe it was 1 for 6 or 0 for 6 on third and fourth downs in the second half, which is valid. I went and took a look though at like what were the situations. Like, did Missouri run enough on first and second down though? So they have one third down where they rush on the first 2 downs. So there's that, they at least try it on that drive. On the drive where they have the fake punt, they pass on first, second, and third down. And because you pass on first and second and they go nowhere, they're facing a third and 11. So of course you're going to pass it on third rather. And then, you have the fake punt run. And then you have the 2 late in the game on that final drive there where Bo Pribula converts on a fourth down pass to Donovan Olugbaide, where they pass on first and second just because of the timing. There's under a minute left at that point. And then also on that drive where Bo throws that interception on third down, they pass on the first 2 downs again, of course, because of the timing. But really, that fake punt where it's about the middle of the fourth quarter when they're in that situation and they pass on the first 2 downs, that's pretty damning to look back at. And especially when just a few weeks ago in South Carolina, Missouri was in a situation where they were either tied or trailing against South Carolina late in that game, and they didn't try to throw themselves out of it. They ran it over and over again, ran it down their throats, leaned on Ahmad Hardy, were able to stop the run defensively. I think what makes this game a little bit differently as far as why Missouri didn't just, hold on to that workhorse of Ahmad Hardy was the fact that every drive in that fourth quarter seemed like desperation time. It just felt like every drive in that situation. I believe Alabama scores early to mid third quarter, and from that point on, Missouri is either tied or trailing with Alabama for the rest of the game. And it just felt like for as good as the pass rush did defensively for Missouri, it just felt like every time Missouri had the ball, you didn't know when it was going to be the last where the game was in reach. Now, that is on the coaching staff and the play caller to recognize, have that game awareness and not put all your marbles on the table for making it happen on this drive. But again, I think that's the main difference as far as South Carolina, where Missouri felt a lot more in control of that one. And I mean, it showed as far as reason to be somewhat desperate and try to be thrown out of it quickly when Alabama on that drive after the fake punt, Ty Simpson just has a ridiculous throw on fourth down. How clutch and this Alabama offense can be. So that's my thoughts on third downs and the run game in general and just the offense as a whole. Michael, any other thoughts there?
I don't know if this is like an incorrect way of thinking, so I'm gonna preface what I'm about to say by saying that, but I don't necessarily agree with, especially at the beginning of the fourth quarter, when they were down by either 3 or 10. I can't remember when the fake punt happened off the top of my head.
The fake punt was later in the fourth quarter, so
they're probably down by 3.
Right, yeah, because they scored a touchdown right at the beginning of the fourth quarter.
Yes, okay. So, I understand later into the fourth quarter, obviously you're trailing by 10 or 3 or 7 or whatever it is, and you feel the need to, pass the ball a lot. Like, that's fine. But there were moments throughout the game where they were passing on first and second down, like you said, when they could have ran the ball and established Ahmad Hardy's presence earlier. Same with Jamal Roberts. I know he had that one big run, but if that doesn't happen, then he was a non-factor. So I just feel like they could have done a better job of establishing both of them earlier in the game. And I think in my opinion, I think they turned to desperation mode a little too early. And I understand why. It's because they didn't feel like they had control of the game, which is fair and reasonable. And I understand that. Like you said, very different circumstances from this one to South Carolina. But I just feel like so many of their chunk plays all season long have been Ahmad Hardy and Jamal Roberts. And for like to not rely on that just still puzzles me a little bit because um given what Bo had done the entire game and what we've seen from him in terms of strength and weakness and this Alabama defense being the best they've played, um I I still really can't get 100% grasp on why they didn't go to Hardy or Robertson. I understand the fumble and I understand that Alabama's defense was doing a really good job. I think that's one thing that is probably worth mentioning, that we kind of highlighted last week Alabama's run defense as something that could be exploited. Heck, I think I even said that they would be able to stop Ahmad Hardy, and obviously they went away from him, but they did stop him. I mean, he was good, but it was not the same level of dominance that we're used to seeing from him by any means. But I still can't get a full grasp on why why they stopped going to him. I mean, yeah, they're not on the field that much. They can't give him the ball, but there were definitely opportunities circled where they could have went to him earlier, and they didn't. So again, it's a giant what if. Missouri, I mean, Alabama absolutely got Missouri to play into their game plan. So kudos to them and their coaching staff for a really good game plan, because Missouri was uncomfortable and it was desperation. Again, somehow, some way, they didn't do terrible in those situations. It looked really ugly, but again, somehow, some way, they still found a way to be in the game. So again, it doesn't fully make sense to me how they were even in the competitive at the end of the game in the first place. It seems like Alabama should have buried them. So credit to them. This team is good at that. But yeah, I think not going to Ahmad Hardy and Jamal Roberts doesn't quite make much sense to me. Even on the fake punt drive, and you said they passed on first, second, third down. Why not run the ball on first down? Off the top of my head, the field position wasn't horrible to start. Like, it was pretty average, I believe. So that just doesn't make sense to me at all.
Yeah.
So again, I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth. It makes you wonder if they're kicking themselves a little bit for not going to them, especially earlier in the game. I think that could have been done more, but I guess it's in the past now.
Right. Yeah. So I take back what I said, that Missouri scored a touchdown at the beginning of the fourth quarter. It was an interception that they threw at the very beginning of the fourth quarter, but Alabama scored a field goal right before the start of the fourth. So Missouri was trailing by 3 from the 09 mark of the third quarter until 3:16 of the fourth. So again, it's easy in hindsight, just knowing the situation, that Missouri was going to have more chances. But again, it felt like Missouri was in desperation mode for those fourth quarters. But yeah, again, especially the fourth, the drive where they do the fake punt, that ends at the 7:02 mark. Drive begins at 9:19. Like you said, Michael, the field position wasn't terrible. They started the drive at their own 31. It's not like they needed to get themselves out of the the sand. And so yeah, I think both things can be true, that Missouri kind of got lost in the situation a little bit, didn't trust the process enough, because what you mentioned about Jamal's breakout run, I think that was the proof in the pudding, because like you said, Alabama did do a solid job of stopping the run. Out of Ahmad Hardy's 8 first half carries, 5 of them went for 2 yards or less. Really impressive. They were really slanting well off the edge. Missouri could not get a lot going on those outside runs, but the fact that Jamal Roberts breaks off that one near the end of the first half shows, all right, eventually you're going to gash them enough, you're going to be able to find something in there. So look, I think this run game, this does not change my opinion at all about Jamal Hardy, or why do I keep on mixing their names, about Jamal Roberts nor Ahmad Hardy. I think they're both really good running backs. I think Missouri can and should lean on them in the future, but also like this offense as a whole, even in the games where Ahmad Hardy has been great, like the pass game is lagging behind. And I think that's hurting both the pass and run game when, the pass game isn't there to help out the run game. And obviously the pass game being bad isn't good for the pass game in general. So look, I mean, Eli Drinkwitz said they have to get him more rhythm on offense. One of the things he said there is we have to be willing to throw the ball on first down. Well, I mean, they certainly were against Alabama in the second half. I think it does have to come down to quicker completions. Eli Drinkwitz had said, the problems with third or fourth down, it wasn't like they were not that. It's not that they weren't, or it's not that they were getting behind the sticks. It wasn't that they weren't getting enough on first and second and then facing third and long, besides on that, the third and 11 and then the third and 10 where both throws an interception on. But a third and 6 and a third and 4 are manageable situations for sure. Not situations you're running in, especially this late in the game. But again, I think in general, the passing game could definitely use some quicker options. And maybe they are designing that. And, just based off of what Bo has been doing, Drinkwitz has said before that Bo needs to stop trying to be superhero on every play by, doing too much when he's reacting to pressure. And that could be part of it. I thought in this game, there were some times where Bo did a good job of checking it down to Brett Norfleet. But also the flip side of that, I think, well, one, they do need to, have those quicker passes to get in rhythm, but also like the deep passing game is just simply not something that Missouri is trying at this point. Again, maybe they're designing it and they're just not going to it, or it's not opening enough. But we talked when they played UMass and Louisiana, like they were just guarding for their lives because they knew that Missouri's wide receivers could burn them. So these defenses were guarding for their lives on the back end. Alabama, has a little more equipment in the secondary, so to say, to be able to guard that. And so I think this is a good point to talk about Donovan Olukpade. Like, it's clear that, I mean, at this point, Donovan, it's still early. He's at a much smaller sample size than everybody else. But I was thinking about it, like, is Donovan, like, I think depending on the more we see from him, you could make the argument of Donovan being the best receiver on this team. Not as far as like Kevin Coleman obviously has the career accomplishments. He's been good in this offense so far. But again, depending on what Donovan Olukpade shows, I would not be surprised. Probably doesn't lead the team in receiving yards just because of how far we are into the season at this point. But I mean, he led the team in receiving yards against Alabama despite not getting a single target in the first 58 minutes. The guy has a knack for just ridiculous catches. And I don't know how much like instincts, how much you can really teach that, how much of it is instincts, like what makes him so good at that. But he's clearly good at that. He's clearly good as a deep threat. And, they've talked about Bo not being on the same page, Bo not having the best timing with, or not timing specifically, but at least you look at that interception that Bo had intended for Kevin in the third quarter there, to begin the fourth quarter, rather. He's expecting Kevin to go the other way. Kevin doesn't, and then Bo is throwing it right to Bray Hubbard. Now, we don't know, never found out who was, like, if Kevin was supposed to run the other way or Bo didn't have to play right. Either way, they're not on the same page there. With Donovan, Bo clearly has a ton of trust with him by going to him on 2 third or fourth downs on those final 2 drives there, including on the last play. Now, on that last play, Bo is going for Donovan and it's intercepted, and that's because Alabama made an adjustment after the snap to be able to knock Donovan's route off target, and Bo didn't react to that. So, look, for an offense that is struggling with, as far as Bo not being on the same page, timing with his receivers, and also not having, the deep game there. It's not to say I think Marquise Johnson can do plenty in the deep game, but I think Donovan Olukpade, like, at this point, should be more than a freshman that just comes into, a few times, maybe in garbage time, or, a wide receiver shoe isn't tied and you got to have a quick sub in. Like, he has proven more than enough. Like, not only can he do it in practice, which we saw all offseason, but also can do it perfectly fine in the game. Any thoughts on Donovan and his role, Michael?
I think what makes Donovan so important to this receiving core is like I think it was shown against Alabama that like Bo's ball placement was off. I don't know if something was wrong or if it was a timing thing or he was just like a finger was slipping. Like I don't know. I don't know what the deal was, but I think it's like pretty clear that there was a few throws that were just bad. And I think a few of them were, well, I don't want it to get picked off if he doesn't get it, so I'm gonna throw it high and just give him a chance. But like there was some really poorly placed throws, and that's probably a different conversation for a different day because that wasn't really an issue the first 3 weeks of the season. So I don't really know exactly what the deal is there. But regardless, my point being, if Bo is throwing a deep ball to Marquise Johnson, that's got to be a perfectly placed pass. And not to say that like we've seen Marquise's vertical ability, so he can go up and get balls, but with his hands, you want that to be a perfect or a near perfect throw, where Marquise doesn't necessarily extending or leaping to get it. But with Donovan, I feel like that throw on the right sideline on that last drive shows that that doesn't have to be a perfect pass. You can just throw it up to him. And I'm not saying he's going to get it every time, but he's going to, give it a darn good shot at getting it, right? So I think that's the difference between Donovan and Marquise when it comes to that deep ball threat, and what makes Donovan so unique / important is he has just a ridiculous knack for getting balls out of the air and in one-on-one situations and tight coverage. He has great hands, good, you can spot the ball in the air and come down with it. So, and very clearly athletically gifted, whether it's speed, size, and, ability to jump up and get it. So I think those things make him a really unique target for Bo. And if his ball placement is not going to be perfect, why not just throw it up there? Launch it up and give him a chance. Obviously you don't want to throw an interception, so calculated risks, obviously, but give him a shot. Give it a shot. I think he is a perfect deep ball receiver. Not only a deep ball guy. I don't want to make that clear, but in terms of moving the ball down the field and the deep pass, which has been somewhat non-existent, I think I don't see a better candidate than Donovan. Interesting group of wide receivers on this team, because I like Donovan and he had an incredible game, but with Josh, Marquise, and Kevin, it's kind of hard to like really justify, like at least in terms of the depth chart, which isn't maybe the best way to go about this, because I think it's truly situational who Drinkwitz and Kirby Moore want in the game at the receiver positions, which makes perfect sense. Like I agree with that completely. So it's kind of hard to use the depth chart as like a measuring stick, but it is. I feel like it's a bit of a challenge to justify moving Donovan up or down or up ahead of Josh Manning would be probably the prime candidate, because Josh Manning is not a guy we talk about really at all, but he's been fine. Like he's been good this season. Hasn't been super flashy or exciting, but he's been reliable. And obviously Marquise and Kevin, like they have the experience and they've been productive all season long. So it's kind of a weird situation, but Eli Drinkwitz said that Donovan needs to get the ball more or get more looks at least. So I think that's something to look forward to. Talent wise, I think you could absolutely, like you said, Joey, make the case that he's the best or most talented receiver on this team. I would like to think he's going to get more looks and that, the coaching staff is going to live up to what they're saying. I don't want them to force the ball to him. So, well, maybe I do actually. That kind of contradicts itself because like I said, he is a guy that they can just throw it up to, and it doesn't have to be a perfect throw. He can go and get it. So kind of a weird situation with him. But yeah, in terms of the deep passing game, he kind of seems like the best candidate on this team right now to just chuck it up there, and has a chance to go get it. Which it seems like, at least since we've been covering the team, that isn't exactly a type of receiver they've had. It's been a lot of these, smaller, yard after the catch guys, gadget type players that can go make plays after the ball's in their hands. And Donovan can do that, but I think he has skills maybe better used elsewhere.
Yeah, for sure. And so what you said about the depth chart too, I mean, yeah, I think that's what Drinkwitz he said on Tiger Talk earlier this week. Like we got to continue to push to find ways to get Donovan on the field. And so a lot of people obviously were like, well, aren't you like you're the one that can make that decision, sir? And I think that's more so what he was referring to as kind of what you were hitting on there, Michael. Like, how do you know, Marquise, Josh, and Kevin all deserve to be on that field as well. Now, I mean, deserve isn't the right word because you can work all hard in football, and it's obviously about what's best for the team. But Donovan, I think, has made that case, and so interested to see what they scheme up for him. I mean, typically, and maybe it's just on a case by case basis, but typically freshman wide receivers with Missouri haven't played a huge role. I mean, Marquise Johnson had 13 catches his freshman year, and all of those were just like, screw it, Marquise down there somewhere. Luther Burden only had 45, which was more than I really thought. But in his first, so Donovan has had catches here, and let's see, Donovan's in 4 games. In Luther's first 4 games, he had, let's see, his 13. So not all that different. Of course, Luther, appeared in all the games at least. So yeah, interested to see. I mean, again, at this point, Donovan has just proven to have kind of the poise and clutchness that you don't typically see in freshmen. So there's that. I think also what you mentioned about Marquise and Donovan, the difference between them. I think Marquise's main thing is that he's more likely to beat guys with straight line speed. And so it's not, and so, I mean, that's his thing. And so that obviously relies a lot more on timing, being on the same page. Going to take a little bit longer to get there.
This is kind of off topic really quick. At the bare minimum, this is a guy you're looking at for the next 2 or 3 years as a guy who could be the best receiver on this team, one of the best receivers in the SEC. I don't want to say anything more than that because that might sound kind of extreme, but I mean, it's a fair assumption to make. I feel like that he has that type of ceiling, just based on the flashes we've seen this year. And I mean, if he was more involved in the offense from the get-go, and this is a guy they were targeting every single game, I mean, I think the conversation we'd be having right now would be even different. So, but I mean, the coaching staff is really good at recruiting wide receivers. There's a lot of talented guys that don't see the field. There's been guys who have transferred out because they're high recruits. Courtney Crutchfield didn't see the field because the room was so loaded. So, I mean, good job by Jacob Peeler. He knows how to recruit wide receivers.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the development of them too. I mean, specifically with Josh and Marquise, though, we haven't been able to quite see them, take that to it yet. The one thing I would say with Donovan is just having to prove that he can be a run blocker. I definitely think he has the size for it. He's been in on 65 run blocking snaps, which is a little, and that's on 128 snaps overall. So that's a little over half of his snaps coming on run blocking. So you'd think that'd be a pretty good sign of where they think he's at with that. All right, let's take a look at this Auburn team. Like you mentioned, Michael, this team is pretty messy right now with what they've got going on because Hugh Freeze is certainly on the hot seat. There's not reports, but at least theories and opinions that if he doesn't win this game against Missouri, or at the very least, if it's not a close one that Auburn's in, that he is going to be fired. And so Eli Drinkwitz is asked about on the other end of these coaching rumors this past week of Drinkwitz being mentioned for the Penn State job by certain rumors. Drinkwitz, if you haven't seen the response yet, I'm surprised, but basically said, like, look, I don't pay attention to it. Most of it isn't real, which is fair. He also said, I think, got to mention that Kirby Moore did not interview for the Arkansas job. We had a story on that. That was a report from Riley McFerrin of On3, the Arkansas site. So as Drinkwood said, that built a narrative. I don't think Riley McFerrin's goal was to create dysfunction in the Mizzou fan base and, create bad narratives about Kirby Moore after this Alabama game. But like Drinkwood said, unfortunate that was the case. So I wanted to get that out of the way. That Hugh Freeze reminded me of it. But yeah, this team is in a interesting situation to start SEC season off by losing 3 straight games. Again, it's been very tough. It's been Oklahoma, A&M, and Georgia. And then Missouri coming to town this week. Very tough slate to open SEC play, but I think what has made these losses really frustrating for Auburn is the way that they have occurred. Because at halftime against Oklahoma, they were tied 10-10. At the start of the fourth quarter against A&M, they were trailing only 13-10. Against Georgia at half, they were leaning 10-3. And then they lose all of those games. Now, all of those games, they've only lost by at most 2 possessions. One of them was by 1 possession, I believe. And Hugh Freeze was asked about this Wednesday in the SEC coaches call, like, what's happening there? And Hugh said, man, it's the same plays that we run in the first half, but they just aren't executed the same way. And maybe there's a case to be made there that the Auburn coaching staff isn't making enough adjustments. But I think that has definitely added in the fact that, in some moments, this Auburn team has looked really good. The transfer, especially at wide receivers, the guys that they've added, the roster has performed up to expectations at some point, but then in the second half, they just collapse. So I think that's going to be interesting for a Missouri team coming off a game where they just couldn't, for most of the second half, honestly, especially on offense, didn't execute enough, but were able to make clutch plays in key moments. I think that's going to be interesting to see how this matches up. The other thing, as far as why they're in disarray, is because of the Demario Alston situation earlier in the week, the running back team captain that was dismissed from the team. It seems like Hugh said earlier in the week that Alston did not meet the expectations, requirements of the program, and that seems like it was a little bit more complex of a situation. It wasn't just a discipline issue. So there's a lot going on in Auburn. He was also asked on the coach's call, what do you make of the team morale? And he said, good. So a lot going on there. Missouri is entering a interesting situation down at Jordan-Hare. Michael, what do you make of this 3-3 Auburn team?
Yeah, we're entering an interesting situation, aren't we? I'm not speculating, but if in the universe where Hugh Freeze does get fired after this week and it's the game that we covered, that would be a career first. No, I mean, dysfunctional is the best word used to describe this team. The lack of execution, like you said, in the second half is really weird. Again, especially on offense, because it's a talented team. You have Eric Singleton, Cam Coleman, Malcolm Simmons. I mean, Perry Thompson. The wide receiver room is just loaded. We had the same conversation last year, and they were good last year. And they had other players too, like Keandre Lambert-Smith had a really good game. He's playing in the NFL now, I think, somewhere off in the NFL universe. So obviously a different quarterback situation, but someone we are very familiar with in Jackson Arnold. He's been fine. He's running the ball well. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that he's not the best passer of the football, but he, again, hasn't been terrible. He hasn't thrown an interception yet this season, but they're also not throwing the ball a ton with him. He's only thrown the ball 165 times this season. He's also their second leading rusher. So, I think the level of comfort with Jackson Arnold should be there with him as a player. Auburn absolutely uses him differently, but still very talented mobile quarterback. Different type of mobile quarterback. I feel like we ask Eli Drinkwitz every week, oh, you're defending a mobile quarterback, but this is different. This is not necessarily a play extender. He can do that, but he is a true option threat, design run guy. That really hasn't been the case with guys like Sellers and like Simpson and Daniels. Those are play extenders who are known for throwing the football, but they can run. Jackson Arnold's thing is he runs the ball. So that should be a main priority of the defensive game plan. Jeremiah Cobb is very good running back. the Damari Alston situation is so weird. I don't really know what to say. I will note that it seems like a lot of his teammates were surprised about the decision. So again, that's a fact. Not speculating. Weird situation though. Yeah, it's dysfunctional. But that being said, this team, it kind of goes back to what I said at the very beginning. Like, it's a very talented football team. They have probably the talent of one of the best teams in the country. I don't know the numbers, but they had to have brought in a top 10 transfer portal class, headlined by guys like Eric Singleton. So they're very capable of winning this game. I think if the ball bounces the right way and they can execute the second half, Missouri's going to have their hands full, but that's just not something that's happened at all this season, which is odd. It's not the most disciplined team in the country. So, but again, there's so much talent at a variety of positions. I know Eli Drinkwitz mentioned the offensive line. To my knowledge, Xavier Chaplin's a guy they brought in at a left tackle, and he's one of the best offensive tackles in the country. You have Keldrick Falk and Kayron Crawford. Yes. I mean, Falk is just he's an animal. I wrote about this yesterday, and I believe he'll be lining up with Keegan Trost. That obviously Keegan did a really good job of guarding Dylan Stewart. This is a completely different guard that he's going to have to, work with. Falk is like 285 pounds, but moves insane. So a ridiculous combination of power and speed. Going to be a challenge for him. I think Kayron Crawford is also pretty big on the other side for Caden Green. So a lot of one-on-one challenges. I mean, the secondary is going to have their hands full with whoever is guarding who. That's going to be an interesting, some interesting matchups to watch there. Who gets tasked with guarding who? But I think second half execution is going to be the key for Missouri. Because if Auburn comes out and is making mistakes and is falling flat, then there's going to be plenty of opportunities to take advantage of on both sides of the ball. So weird team, talented team. Kind of one of those situations where the fact that they're playing at home should make a difference. I know they lost a few of these most recent games at home. They lost to Georgia at home. Missouri isn't Georgia, so might be a little bit of a difference there, but they'll have the home crowd on their side. I think Jordan Hare is one of the best atmospheres in the country. So regardless of how good or bad the team is, they're always going to have that with them. So that should make a difference as well, I suppose. But yeah, really weird team. I haven't watched many of their games live. I've went back and watched recently here, see what the deal is with them, but they don't execute very well at very key moments in the game, and a lot of these games are close. So they are kind of similar to Missouri, where they're maybe a play or two away from winning some of these really big games. I mean, again, Oklahoma, A&M, Georgia, Missouri is a brutal stretch. It does get a little bit easier after that, but could be a very different conversation around this Auburn team if they, figure things out in the second half.
Absolutely. So, yeah, the wide receivers are definitely a position group to watch, especially, just for Jackson Arnold to have more reps under his belt with him week by week. With Jackson Arnold, Eli Drinkwitz has been trying to find nice ways to say that Oklahoma's, they were very banged up on offense last year by the time they came to Missouri, but also offensively, did not have great weapons for him, did not have a great offensive line in front of him. And that's, having a little more confidence with the guys around him has changed. Jackson Arnold's playing style. Defensively, Auburn is 4th ranked run defense in the SEC, so definitely something to watch there. And Keldrick Falk is definitely a guy that can impact the run game as well. And you mentioned how he might line up against Trost. They moved Keldrick around quite a bit in the game against Missouri last year, and they've continued to do the same with him so far this year. Obviously, most of it is on the edges, but there's also been some times where he's kind of in the interior as basically a 3-4 defensive end. So he's going to be all over. Crawford is obviously a guy to watch too. So again, there's definitely dudes on this team to watch out for. But yeah, I'm excited, like you said at the top. I'm excited to see how this game goes. All right, wanted to round this out here talking about recruiting to Missouri. After a quiet summer, has been on a little bit of a heater recently. So on the same day that they lost to Alabama, they got 2 commitments along the offensive line. Center Bryson Wessel, he's from the same town as Connor Tollison, so maybe that's a good path. Johnny Jones, also offense tackle, formerly committed to UCLA. And then on defense, they get 2 guys this week in Birdie Jones and then Carter Stewart, both defensive backs. Both and 3 of these guys were guys that were committed to other schools first. So, Michael, what can you tell us about all 4 of those guys?
Yeah, I'm actually going to throw in 2 other names because I don't think we talked about them last week. And 4-star running back TJ Hodges and 4-star linebacker JJ Bush. Just really quick, Bush was a Arkansas commit. Mizzou missed out on him over the summer. That's a guy that I think a lot of people thought that Missouri was going to be able to land. I think he was kind of telling all the coaches what he wanted to hear. Ends up going to Arkansas, so that was a little bit weird one. But he committed to Missouri within a few days of backing out of his commitment. He's the 273rd best player in the country. I believe he is the 2nd or 3rd best player in the class right now. Just very talented, versatile linebacker. Plays a little bit of safety as well. So that's going to be a guy they're able to utilize in multiple ways. TJ Hodges is incredibly productive, 4-star running back, 330th in the country. Really strung out his recruitment for like a really long time. I think there was multiple points in the summer and leading up to now where people thought Hodges was going to make a decision, but he did it now, and very talented player, kind of just a bruiser, physical running back. I think Missouri fans are really going to like him. So those 2 guys, really key pieces of this recruiting class, in all honesty. So good additions there. Starting with the most recent ones, with Bryson Wessel, kind of an interesting player. He's listed as a defensive lineman or an interior defensive lineman on most of the major recruiting sites. Brandon Jones was the one recruiting him for Missouri, so he's going to play center, which is kind of interesting. I feel like most kids aren't recruited to play center out of high school, so kind of an interesting deal there. He's undersized right now. He's 6'5", 260, so gonna need to do some bulking up, but he's a great athlete. Another track and field guy. It's a really common theme for a lot of the dudes that Missouri recruits. So very athletic, but that's gonna take a little bit of refining to get him ready to play center. So you would hope this is not a guy that's starting next season, out of all due respect to Bryson, because it's going to take at least a season or so to get him developed. Johnny Jones is probably right now the crown jewel of this recruiting class, number 123 in the country. Just a ridiculously athletic, kind of modern left tackle prospect, really good speed, insane arms. I like his hands. He's really strong and aggressive. So that's going to be a guy that you could probably look at that could play sooner than you'd think. If you look at the future of this offensive tackle group, you have Jack Lang and Johnny Jones. That is pretty darn good. I don't think anyone's going to be complaining about those guys. Jones recently decommitted from UCLA, and whatever mess was going on there, maybe they've turned it around a little bit, but beat out teams like Florida State, Penn State, Mississippi State off the top of my head. So good recruiting win. Another addition to the weird Missouri-Florida recruiting pipeline, but really good addition. Probably wouldn't be surprised if this ends up being the best player in the class for the Tigers. So good addition there. Then it's a lot of guys. Carter Stewart was the second to most recent one. This was a guy that I asked around. I had no idea who he was. So sorry, Carter. But he is the number 1,993 player in the country. He's a safety from Pearland, Texas. Just kind of a more raw, athletic player. Another track and field guy. That's really all I know about Carter at the moment. Definitely just being fully honest, a guy I have to watch a little bit more. But flipped from Utah. His brother is actually committed to play wide receiver at Texas. So shout out to twins, I guess. But cool player. I mean, again, a little bit of a surprise addition, but just more depth at the moment. A guy that they can kind of work with and develop. Most recent one was Brody Jones, which happened 3 hours after Carter Stewart committed on Monday. So keeping us busy and on our toes a little bit. Listed as a cornerback on most major recruiting sites. He's 6'3", 175. So definitely some interesting size there. Jacob Yora was recruiting him, so he's gonna play safety. Another track and field guy. I think the size is just the most important thing. He's good in coverage. Needs to refine his ability to tackle a little bit. That's just kind of common theme for most high school defensive backs. But great speed, really good in coverage. He has long arms as well, so going to be a good coverage safety. I mean, this technically is the third safety they have in the class, so interesting that they are recruiting him there. He's going to have the versatility to go back and forth. So maybe he'll start at safety and move to corner. Or maybe one of the other two, Tony Forney or Carter Stewart, will make the move to corner as well, just to switch things up. But Brody Jones is a very good player, was previously committed to Cincinnati, so another flip prospect. So that's a lot of names, slightly overwhelming, but a class that had 10 guys at the end of June and was ranked somewhere around 80th nationally is now up to 18 commits and 31st nationally, and they aren't done yet. So really impressive stuff. I wrote about this a couple of weeks ago after the flurry of, DeMarcus Johnson, Micah Nickerson, TJ Hodges, JJ Bush, that I feel like I was doubting Eli Drinkwitz's ability to recruit, / maybe they're just going to, with the mindset that they're just going to shift to the portal more. I didn't think the class is going to go over 15 players. Now it's looking like it could get to like 21 or 22. So, good on him, I guess. I mean, it's impressive stuff. As far as, I'll just throw this out here, as far as names to keep an eye on, I think Taj Overton is the big one. 4-star defensive tackle, just backed out of his commitment from Oklahoma State over the last week. Seems to be like Missouri's in the driver's seat. He's been to campus a time or two over the last couple of weeks since the season started. So that'll be probably the top guy to keep an eye on. DQ Forkba, 4-star linebacker as well, took a visit recently, official visit recently. That'll be a guy to keep an eye on. 3-star cornerback Ahmad Billings is committing here in around 10 days, I believe. That would be another guy that I would not be surprised if he ends up in the class. So impressive stuff over the last month or so. I mean, it's 6 guys in October now, which is impressive, and they're not done yet. So fun time to be writing all the recruiting stories.
All right. We appreciate it. Good to get that insight. So that's going to wrap it up for us today on the Things Mizzou podcast. Again, we'll be back. We'll be out there in Auburn providing coverage with you. We already got all sorts of preview content over at Missouri Tigers on SI. So appreciate you tuning in here. Hope you do the same with the rest of our content.